Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, viewers. Once again, we are coming your way with Discovering the Light series. We count it all joy to come your way with insights from the Holy Quran. If viewers will remember, 2 weeks ago, we had an extensive discussion on what is Islam, what are the differences between Ahmadiyya, the Sunnis, and the Shia. In explaining the differences and what is Ahmadiyya, another topical issue cropped up, and it was about Jesus. Movie was very emphatic that for us to understand in proper context, he needed to do an extensive explanation on Jesus's relevance to the differences that he was trying to teach all of us. So we decided, and we all agreed, he also made a commitment that we will meet today and discuss in detail the Islamic perspective of Jesus, so that the background will be firmly made for all of us to understand the differences that exist between the Sunnis, the Shia, and Ahmadiyya. Then again, lack of time did not permit us to do true justice to the issue of veil and its importance to the Islamic culture of dressing. Viewers will remember that we discuss societal effect on our moral life today. And one of the issues to uproot the issue of immorality and infidelity in our culture today is to have our women dress in a way that will not expose part of their bodies to public view. Those sensitive parts of women are for their husbands, and it should be restricted to the home. It should not be made public. So for that to be achieved, Islam has prescribed a mode of dressing, and that mode of dressing includes the veil that we highlighted in our last meeting. So today we are doing more of a continuation of our last broadcast. So you are very much welcome to join us as we continue our Discovering the Light series today. You are all welcome once again to our program. Let me quickly invite or welcome Movie to our set, to the movie. Once again, you are welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to have you around.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you here in our office, in our place.
Very well. Very well. We had a wonderful discussion the last time, and the feedback, it's one that is very encouraging. People are really following your teachings, and you made a commitment the last time when we discussed what is Ahmadiyya and the differences between the Sunnis, the Shia, and Ahmadiyya, that we're going to meet again and dedicate a program to bring a deeper highlight on who Jesus is and his reference or his relations to the differences you wanted to teach us about. So today, the ball is in your court. You tell us who Jesus is and his importance to the references we were making the other day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, the person of Jesus is very strangely, for the whole purposes that he came was a message of love, of understanding, of unity. But in a way, he is one of the central figures between different religions.
Yes.
You know, which is an issue of conflict. The Jews don't accept him as a Messiah, and the Jews at this time, they actually, some of their scholars, they persecuted him severely, as we all know.
Yes.
And that is why they're still waiting for their Messiah to come. The Christians actually originally were Jews, those who have found in Jesus the spirit of their Messiah, and they have accepted him. Those were the early Christians. And then historically we know that through Paul, Christianity had another evolution in their theology. Then comes the matter of Muslims. What is the verdict, in a way, of Islam regarding the center figure of Jesus? Because these two main populations, the Jews and Christians, they were both in a strong argument about the matter of Jesus. And neither did the Christians had any strong scientific proof on the role of Jesus. Neither did the Hebrews, the Jews, have any strong scientific basis on their rejection or on their understanding of Jesus. And in a way, this argument keeps lingering on till today. Although now, because of other matters, they have ways of collaborating, and history is very rich between those two countries, between these two religions or nations, if you want to call them so. And obviously, unfortunately, there has been a lot of conflict historically, not really on the matter of Jesus, but because of geopolitical matters or whatever it is. Now Islam comes, and Islam took more the side of the early Christians. They said that, neither were the Jews of today present at that time, nor were the Christians of that day present. The only being that was present was Allah, God. So with his authority, Islam recognized Jesus as a pure soul, as a pure human being, far away from the allegations and accusations the early Jews have made against the mother of Jesus, and far against the other side of exaggerating the role of Jesus into a divinity. That Islam has made that he was a pure man and a prophet of God, sent by God. His soul was sent there to guide people, and he had
not to be worshipped.
But not to be worshipped. So that's the central issue between all these three religions. Instead of avoiding this topic, we believe discussing this topic could bring us even closer to each other when we are able to hear and listen out to the other. And I think as a Muslim, we are not directly part of this conversation. Islam has played a role of an arbiter in this matter. That you Jews, you have a history of guidance from God, that God is one and you should worship him alone. So you are also right in that sense. And to the Christians, that yes, Jesus is our prophet too, and we love him too. And whenever we can find the right guidance from him, we will benefit from it. That's also something very interesting when we study the Bible in our University of Theology. In the beginning, as immature minds of youngsters, when we started studying the Gospel and the Bible, and in a sense of finding faults or mistakes, we could have found them, but that was of no avail for us. our principal at that time, he said that the Quran acknowledges, although there are a lot of mistakes, maybe, and human interpolations, but still Allah's destiny or Allah's command has made sure that some of the teachings, will be protected. Not all of them, but some, for certain reasons. So when the Quran acknowledges that there could be light and guidance, we should read the Bible also with a certain love, not to
despise it.
not to despise it. And when we study the Bible with this lens, we can profit more from different prophecies we find in the Bible.
Talking about prophecies,
Yes.
it brings me to John 16, 12 to 14,
Yes. Yes.
where Jesus said, I had many things to tell you,
Yes.
but you may not be able to comprehend all now. I'm only paraphrasing.
Yes. Yes.
But the Spirit of truth will come. And when He comes, He will tell you what has been revealed unto Him.
Yes.
This is one prophecy that relates very much to Islam, because our verdict is that the Spirit of truth and the science surrounding the Spirit of truth is an indication of the advent of Prophet Muhammad. So our verdict is quite clear on that. And it brings us also to the relationship that existed between Jesus Christ and Prophet Muhammad, because he made a prophecy about him. And the remaining part of his activity or mission on earth was bequeathed to Prophet Muhammad to carry on. So talking about prophecies, I think this part is our verdict. But I want you to highlight a little bit more on that, because there's a huge misconception, an outcry between Christians, as you earlier said, the Jews, and the Muslims. We are playing the arbitrary role, but we have been drawn into it. Because we conclude that that prophecy was about Prophet Muhammad, and Christians also say, no, it is not about Prophet Muhammad. I want our perspective on that. How do you counter such accusations?
I think first of all, just you made reference to this prophecy of these words in John. For us Muslims, as Muslims, it is not even that relevant, because it's not that because of this only one prophecy we accept the Holy Prophet Muhammad as the Prophet of God. Actually, it's the other way around. We accept the Holy Prophet Muhammad because of his own intrinsic beauties and qualities and miracles that he has shown us, and which are in front of us. The concept of this prophecy, or mentioning it, is more to Christians that they should reflect on one aspect. The aspect is that the prophecy says that he will say whatever he will hear. Okay? And this is a claim exclusively up to now made by the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And this he will say what he will hear makes a reference to another prophecy of the Torah, which is in Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 18 to 22, where Moses salam has made a similar prophecy, but then he has actually added a point which is fully in congruence with the Christian theology as well. And he also said that the Spirit of truth, or the one who is to come after me, he will guide you, and he will speak in the name of God. Everything he will say will be in the name of God. But if he says anything in the name of God that God has not told him to do so, then he will put him to account, and he will be punished by death.
This is the version of Moses.
This is the version of Moses. It's a paraphrasing it. The same is that if somebody is making a claim that he is coming from God and God has not punished him, it means two things. Either he's truthful, or God forbid, he is not truthful and God's hands are bound that he cannot protect his own people to be protected from this falsehood. For example, if there is the ambassador of Ghana who was duly recognized as the ambassador of the whole country of Ghana, and he speaks here in the name of Ghana or in name of the president of the government without the permission of the president.
Impossible.
The president will not stay quiet.
Yeah.
No, he will not be. He will not just let him. He will immediately take him off. And that's a human being that has this power to do so. So the moment we read and begin the Quran, every single chapter of the Quran begins with the words, "In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful," which is an introduction that everything that now is coming is not the word of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ or of any disciple who has written it 70 or 100 years afterwards. But it is that every time the Quran begins repeatedly with the claim that I'm telling you that I'm saying this in the name of Allah. Okay? If his life still was a life of success, which it was, of unimaginable success that in the history of humanity within 23 years of span, from being an orphan child, to becoming the leader of an entire or many tribes, is in itself a proof that God was with him. He did not disapprove that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ claimed to say what he said, that he heard it from God, which is a very clear claim, even clearer than any other prophet before him. In the Torah there are some things which Moses has said that this is what God has told me, the commandments and everything. There's a claim, but it's not such a claim that it is verbatim the same thing, because it has been transferred or something. So now we have to ask them that if you refuse the prophecy of John 12, for us it's not relevant. The prophecy of John 16, 12, 14, if it was there, it is there, it's fine. If it's not there, it doesn't change an iota of our faith.
As a matter of fact, it says accuracy is not truth. Truth is consistency. So I perfectly agree with you that if one prophecy is enough to define the Prophet Muhammad, then Islam may probably be also getting it wrong. But there are other hypotheses to consider.
And then there's a question that if there is this prophecy and there's a warning of false prophet not to be successful, then either the whole passage of the Bible is wrong or the prophet is right. So that's the thing. As I said, it's actually, if we clean our hearts, a unifying force. That the more you believe in the Holy Prophet Muhammad, the more the truth you will find in your Bible. It's a very, very beautiful way of looking at it, and a very uniting way of looking at it. That the moment you reject the Holy Prophet, you will have to reject some verses of the Bible.
But do you think sectorial motivation has becrowded objectivity in the minds of those who are supposed to know the truth?
I think it is history. History tells it's very, unfortunately, very common, not only in Christianity, in all religions. That's why I believe that this advice from our principle of reading the Bible with love will bring you farther as a scholar than reading it with the rancor in your heart. And that is the same invitation that I would have to Christian scholars. And I know some who have studied the Quran only with the intention to find faults in it. And I know scholars who have studied the Quran and they fell in love with it. And because of this, they can take more advantage of the teachings of the Quran.
Yeah, I could make reference to a French scientist who recently became or converted to Islam. He went on adventure to discover faults. I believe you are very much aware of the story. He went on adventure to discover faults in the Holy Quran, only to discover that the Quran was written in Arabic. He then went to study Arabic, and after advancing his knowledge in Arabic, he went back to read the Quran and discovered the truth in the Quran. So had no option but to convert into Islam. So he's now a Muslim. That brings me to the point you are making, that we have to look at the issues with objective minds and not with our rancor that we nourish in our hearts for the truth. Viewers, I believe you are very much enjoying the discussion today. I promised you that it is going to be very insightful, and we are learning. The key or the takeaway here for all of us is to look at the issues with our objective mind. Once you read the Quran with a heart of objectivity, with the mind of objectivity, you are bound to discover the truth. Like the French scientists, have forgotten the name. The name is quite a mouthful. Recently, he went in with a purpose to discover faults, but because he did so with an objective mind, ended up discovering the truth, like movie is saying. Okay, we will continue. Can you now throw more light on Jesus's relevance to the Islam, Sunni, and the Shia differences we were discussing the other day?
Yes. The relevance of the person and figure of Jesus is actually not something that stemmed out of the beginning or the foundation of Islam, but it's more a discussion of the latter days in which we find ourselves today. Because in the beginning, there was no obscurity of the role of Jesus and any other prophet for that he was a truthful prophet, he was a truthful man who was beloved by God, and his mother was a pious and pure woman. And that's in many segments of the Quran repeatedly coming as an issue, as not an issue, but as a topic. That you look at Jesus and you look at his mother, how they were pure, and they could be a model for you also. Looking at this, at the time of the Holy Prophet, when you see that they had the Prophet among themselves and the guidance, so there was no real issue among the Muslims. Obviously, there were hypocrites, but they will always be there, who did not have the courage to leave their worldly desires fully and wholly. But that's everywhere it will be the case. It was the case with Jesus's disciples.
Yes.
That they could have just forsaken him at any moment of time for the fear of death, or other torture or persecution. It happened at the time of Moses, and it happens. It's a natural thing that people have different levels of faith and commitment. Then the issue came that the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on a very sad day passed away. And when he passed away, his loss was unbearable for the companions who were able to sacrifice their lives for the Holy Prophet Muhammad. One of the greatest companions was Umar Farooq,
Yeah.
who later became the second Khalifa. At the moment of this distress, he stood up and he did not acknowledge
His death.
the death of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And he said that he had spiritual journeys before, whilst his body was lying there, but his soul had spiritual journeys to heavens and to Jerusalem and these matters. So this is also another spiritual experience of his. Don't say he's dead. In fact, he was so hurt and so emotional. But there was Hazrat Umar.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He was an emotional person anyway.
Emotional, a passionate person, I would say, passionate. That he took this word that whoever now dares to say that the Holy Prophet Muhammad is dead, you know, I will cut him, I will hurt him, I will do this. You know. At that time, Abu Bakr, who became the first Khalifa, and you know, who has a very high status in the history of Islam among the Sunnis, he stood up and he recited a verse of the Holy Quran. He said, Ma Muhammadun illa Rasul. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is but only a messenger. If he dies or he is killed, قد خلت من قبله الرسل, and many messengers before him have passed away. أفإن مات أو قتل, if he dies or is killed, will you turn away from your heels? You know, was that just your faith? Is just that the matter of faith, that as long as he's alive you're with him, and then when he's dead you will not you forget Allah? When he recited this verse, which was well known among the companions, Hazrat Umar almost fell into unconsciousness, unconscious submission, because he had no counter argument. And that was in fact, you know, the first ijma. Ijma is the first ruling of the companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad after the Quran and the Sunnah and Hadith. You know, the ruling was that the Holy Prophet is as dead and passed away as all the messengers before him. Now, Hazrat Umar was not just a passionate man, but he was a very learned man and very present in his mind. And he, at that time, if he would actually had believed that Jesus is still alive, there was no better point to raise this issue. He said, no, Abu Bakr, if Jesus is still alive, then why would Muhammad be dead? You know, you said that all the messengers passed away, but Jesus is still alive, so Muhammad is still alive. But he did not raise this issue because it was no issue for them. There was no way. There was no way at that time the companions had any conception of Jesus being still alive. Now we come to the main issue, the crux of the, other than geopolitical issues that have risen today between Sunni and Shia, is the leadership of the Muslims after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, which was in the early century of Islam through the Khulafa, which we have spoken last time also. Yes. That the Shias do not acknowledge the first three Khulafa. The Sunnis do, we do as well. But then the issue comes that Muslims, as the prophecy of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, were in dire need of continuous spiritual guidance, even though they had the Quran with them in their hands. Now, Sunnis, in their superficial arguments, they make this argument that if we have the Quran and we have the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why do we need another Imam today? Why do we need spiritual guidance today? But it's just a superficial argument, because the more we listen to them and ask them questions, and say, then what was the need of Abu Bakr Siddiq? No? What was the need of Umar Farooq? Was it only for military advancement? No. Because their contribution to the spirituality of Islam and the education of the Muslims has a much farther impact till today than the military conquest that they were forced into by the societies around them that time.
So if I get you right, it means their argument against the advent of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmed is nullified by the advent of the Caliphate, because they believe in the Caliphate.
Yes, not only by that, that by itself stands alone. But then they have also a strong acceptance of some traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which are hadiths, which speaks of the coming of Jesus in the latter days. So as far as this argument that there is no need for a prophet to come is nullified by their own acknowledgement that a prophet will come.
This is the point I intended earlier on.
And now what happens is that the difficulty we feel with the discussion is the level of education and commitment a Sunni scholar has to his own beliefs. And that is why our question is, and this argument cannot be satisfied because there is no clear line of their theology, because which is very confused. What is the clear line? I will ask him. We say that a prophet after the Holy Prophet Muhammad has come. They say no prophet can come. We say Jesus will come. Now the argument goes into two ways. Jesus was not a prophet, and they say yes, Jesus was a prophet, but he was an old prophet. And we say on that we have another line of arguing. Or sometimes they straight out just say no, he won't be a prophet. On the argument that he says that he won't be a prophet, we say that the Holy Quran, which is the final arbiter between any arguments among the Muslims, in the argument in this Quran, there is a very clear verse which says that Jesus is a prophet, وَجَعَلَنِي رَسُولًا حَيْثُ مَا كُنْتُ, that God has made me a Rasul, a messenger, wheresoever I will be. On this matter, when Jesus will come and you will ask him that he is not a prophet, or if he's a prophet or not, if he acknowledges it, the argument of there will be no prophet after Muhammad is nullified. If he disacknowledges it, then at that time, nauzubillah, this verse of the Quran will be abrogated. Okay, do you understand?
Yeah, I'm very clear with the differences now, much better now, because clearly the issue of the Caliphate, which separates Ahmadiyya from the Sunnis, is made even clearer by their own argument against the advent of Mirza Ghulam Ahmed.
Yes. In both sense, the Khilafat and prophethood. That if we accept there can never be a prophet after the Prophet, then they should accept then even Jesus cannot be.
Yes, but they believe that Jesus will be coming.
Jesus will be coming. At that time, in point of view, we have to make another step back leaving this focalized discussion and agree with the Sunnis on a very fundamental term, which is what is the ultimate authority of jurisprudence and theology in Islam? Is it the Quran?
Mhm.
And they would admit it, it is the Quran, and we would fully agree. We say that if there is a hadith or a saying of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, which goes against very clear verses of the Quran, what is the hypothesis? What happened?
Mhm.
Will you still choose to acknowledge this hadith and then force the interpretation that you learn from this hadith onto the Quran, and you would have to cancel and abrogate verses of the Quran? Or should it be the other way around?
Mm.
That you take the fundamental teachings of the Quran over the hadith?
Hadith.
And unfortunately, it's not a very easy conversation to have, with Sunnis, which is so strange in a way that the Sunni who will listen to us, obviously every Muslim's heart will agree that the Quran is the ultimate authority.
Mm.
But in their theologies, even if we argue with them, they sometimes straight out acknowledge that, God forbid, verses from the Quran could be abrogated. What does abrogation mean? And that's part of their theology.
Yeah.
And with that, not having the same basis, we can discuss for hours and we will not come to any fruitful decision.
Mm.
The basis is, what is the meaning of abrogation? Abrogation means that me as a judge, I have made a decision, a verdict on an issue.
Mm.
But at that point of time, I had a very close view on matters.
Mm.
And now a bigger judge comes and he says that now new evidence has been provided to me, and I abrogate this decision.
The first decision.
So the moment you start abrogating the Holy Quran, means that na'uzubillah, you have found a greater judge who can judge upon Allah's knowledge. The second thing is that if you consider abrogating the verses of the Quran, it means that na'uzubillah, God forbid, God had not full knowledge of the time to come. Huh?
Mm.
So what happens is that when we believe and it's so frustrating sometimes, that we believe that according to the teachings of the Quran, in which we can go into depth, but there will be many sessions. Huh?
Yes.
According to the teachings of the Quran, we are still in need of human guidance. We are still in need of human of divine guidance by humans that He will send to us, like the Mujaddid, the reformers, and even people with higher status. But they refuse. They said no prophet can come. This will be a disrespect to the Quran. Although the prophet would never change a verse of the Holy Quran, but he would rather, bring people and remind them that these are the teachings of the Quran.
Okay.
But then their scholars, they've written books, and it's so painful that Sunni literature is filled with this theological foundation of this verse of the Quran has been abrogated by this verse of the Quran has been abrogated by this verse and this verse, which means they say that God has changed His opinion. But when do you change your mind? When new evidence comes to light.
Absolutely.
Huh?
It establishes one fundamental issue.
Yes.
From the explanations I'm getting from you today, that the Ahmadiyyat perspective is mainly aimed at protecting the sanctity of the Holy Quran.
Yes, and the authority of
the Holy Quran. Because the moment parts of the Holy Quran begins to be abrogated, it means it will no more be the Holy Quran.
Yes.
And God's judgment cannot be overruled by the human intellect or judgment.
Yes. Yes. God's judgment cannot be overruled because God's judgment in the Quran, is something eternal, and it is the human deficiency of the intellect that some verses they don't understand, but that doesn't mean that they're not applicable.
Right. Viewers, I believe we have learned a lot today. We still have a lot to learn. It is getting much interesting. How I wish we could do this till the end of the day. It is getting insightful by the minute. Yet, time, they say, is very key to everything. We will continue, but that will be shortly after this break.